What's going on, guys? Inglorious Rex number 2, Heavy as the Crown. So, this is the series that was started by Shane Davis, and he's got some good stuff in here. So let's just get right on into it. We have everybody here: Shane, writer, and he also did at least the penciling here. So we open up and we got little baby 232, and what we're seeing is dialogue being exchanged between Alex Stone, our main protagonist, and his older brother Nate. So we're back in time because at this point we know that Nate is dead. So they're just kind of talking about what wins fights. Now, Alex is arguing that heart is what's winning fights, and that's what his dad's brought him up to learn. Alex said, well, everybody I fought had heart, and I'm the one still standing. I'm the Rex fighter. They're not. Fight with your mind, use your instincts, that kind of stuff. And he goes on and continues with it being like a balancing act and stuff like that. And then we get some nice little fun humor here. He's like, well, I wouldn't get too cocky and stuff like that, when he's talking about, he's the one still standing, and the other fighters are not. He's like, your Rex is uglier than hell. And he's like, see, it's a balancing act. My Rex is ugly because I'm so damn pretty looking. So I enjoy some of that little input and with the humor. But I also like what we're being shown here. We're seeing that Nate is being hooked up with his Rex, and the last issue taught us that the Rexes are kind of like monstrous clones. They have the pilot's DNA within them, and that's how they're able to kind of bond and work together. And we're seeing that this starts even when the Rex is still very, very young. And so a nice little thing that we're being shown here. And then we're continuing with the back and forth between the two brothers, and more or less what they're talking about is, we need to fight as hard as we can. We learned that even from Mom, and then we fight to the grave as a pound fist. We then cut to current day, and we are seeing that Rex 232 and Alex, they're getting their asses handed to them. And the commentator is saying that basically ever since the Rune and Gun fight that these two had, that they've been just kind of scraping by wins at this point, and there seems to be some issues going on. Now, they're having like a little intermission. We saw the little ding ding, so they're in intermission. Alex's dad's coming in and is like, what's going on? Alex explains to him, hey, 232 is not listening to me. I don't know what's going on. His dad said, okay, well, I'm going to basically disconnect you. I'm going to let 232 fight on his own. And despite Alex not being a part of, being a big fan of that, they go ahead and proceed. And so then what we're going to then get for a little bit is just a kind of a recap as to what this story is all about. I'm Alex Stone. I pilot Rexes. Rexes are piloted by fighters who are like the best of the best. They get to go up and pilot these monsters who are, as I just explained, the clones of their pilots. However, in Alex's case, 232 is not his clone, but rather his brother Nate. And all of this is orchestrated by Little T, or Lil T, sorry. And he says, I'm not exaggerating. 232 is not listening to me. I can't get it. I have no control over him. He does not obey me at all. And all the while, 232 was winning, and we see that he's won. And more monologue talking about how, he needs to be like the defender of the city. He gives the people hope, because the champion also protects the city from the Vile, the creatures that we got a brief glimpse of at the end of issue 1, but they are called the Vile. And there's different grades of them. And I want to also take a moment. I really like this shot of him winning, and you get it like right through the skull of his opponent there. Pretty sweet action shot there, or just a victory shot. And then Alex's inner monologue goes on while more commentators are talking here. He's like, "Can anyone see that I have no control, like over 232?" So he's really concerned about this. What his optics look like here. Meanwhile, we cut over to Anna. Now, I'm not sure if Anna is Alex's girlfriend still. They were a couple in the first one, but in the first issue, Alex cut Anna as far as a shot at the title because they were just getting ready to decommission 232 and felt maybe they can give him a rematch because the last time 232 fought, it was kind of a controversial match. It's the one that ended up killing Nate. So now 232 wasn't supposed to win, and then he did, and so Anna kind of bowed out because she didn't want to fight Alex. But I don't know if that means that they're still a couple or not, or what's going on here, and I will say by the end of this one, I'm still not certain. There has been comments made that they are or are not, or it's like a complicated kind of thing. So, but she's walking, she sees this little alleyway where we meet Troy, who's teaching these kids how to fight and having like little matches within the alley. And she approaches him, and she says that she wants Troy to be like a corner man and, a coach. And more or less what she's getting at is Alex doesn't have control over 232, and if 232 decides he can do more damage to the city than the vial can. And that is not good for the people, so she wants to kind of take the crown from him, since all of that's going down. And she's like, the city deserves better, they deserve me. So we then cut over and we're getting some inner monologue from T, and he's basically talking about the difference between money and power, how he doesn't understand why people would pick money over power. It's like, yeah, money's great and all, but with power you can control the money too, so why wouldn't you have that? And so that's just some inner thoughts on what T is like. And then we see he's checking in on the city. He's got his two assistants there, and he's like, hey, what's going on? And we're being informed that the fights are very popular, that 87% of the population are tuning in. They're wanting to check out the fights. And that's great. However, there's a little bit of controversy. Like, everybody seems to want to... They're very interested in Alex and 232. And his popularity is kind of a 50-50 split. Some people really, really like him. Others just flat out hate him. Some think that he kind of cheated in that fight against Rune. Others in that fight thought it was really awesome that Alex and Gunn both got to fight hand to hand. And she also notes that there's a morale boost whenever 232 yells out epic. Now, this is of concern to T because he's like, well, I didn't build them to talk. I built them to fight. And here we get a nice little shot of the vial. He's like, I built them to, to punch and be punched and to protect the city, give hope to the hopeless, that kind of stuff. So then we cut over. We see Alex is in training, and his dad comes in and is like, what the hell are you training for? We don't even have a match. But mostly Alex is kind of letting off some steam. He doesn't really like that he has no control over 232. He doesn't like that, his dad's kind of a win no matter what kind of mindset and is taking that control away from Alex. And his dad goes on to explain, like, hey, this is also about optics. We got to have you win in matches. If you fall, you get back up. That's what Nate did. And that's why people loved him. You gotta have the optics to go with everything. And so they're not the most agreeable in terms of how they're handling this situation. But we then cut over to like a little press tour between Alex and we got T over here. And, you know, T's over here hyping him up and stuff like that. And Alex he's thinking about, you know, maybe telling the truth that he has no control over 232. But T is quick to cut him off and just kind of, you know, get him back on focus as to what we're talking about here. And he's like, man, I'm running out of opponents to line up against, you know, for you and stuff like that. And then they start going in like audience questions and stuff like that. And that's when Anna chimes in and is like, you know, why don't you tell them the truth that you have no control? Now, that is a shock to Alex that she would do something like that, especially given their relationship. And this intrigues T. Very happy by all of this. And so he continues to play in on that. He's like, you know, wow, those are some accusations. You know, this sounds like maybe something you guys need to settle in the ring. And Alex doesn't want to do that. And he's like, well, I don't pay you to think about this thing. I pay you to fight, you know. And he's like, should I take Razor, Anna's, her Rex, should I take him off the decommission list? And, you know, you'd have your shot at the crown. And she agrees. And this just causes all sorts of media uproar. You know, everybody's wanting to talk about it. And you start to see that maybe people are being swayed on their opinions on Alex and 232. Because some of the accusations start being heard by them. And they're like, well, is Alex kind of a cheat? Does he have control? What's going on? So we then cut 6 weeks later, and these two still are just not getting along. They've been doing all that training, but 232 still refuses to listen to Alex. And then, you know, right before the match, you know, Alex and his dad, they're talking about Anna and all the history between them, you know, because Anna used to be coached by Alex's dad, but they had to cut her loose because, well, those two got into a relationship and Alex was getting kind of distracted. And Alex is also worried for Anna's safety, and he's like, well, you can't go thinking like that. You know, right now she's not your girlfriend or ex or whatever, so see, we still don't know what's going on. She's just in your way. So just trying to get him focused. Task at hand, just go out there, do your job. So we get the match. We see that Razor is way smaller than 232. And we see that, well, that doesn't matter a whole lot because 232 is immediately just getting his ass beat. Yeah, it's starting off just like all of the others, except Anna is quite the fighter. As we saw in the first issue, she knows her stuff. And also the thing we saw is these little hooks here, they're venom, and they give her and Razor quite the advantage as far as fighting, especially bigger opponents. Because they can just stick in and cause them to, like, more or less fall off. It's very lethal. And so then we cut from the fight. We see this little drone being chased by one of these vial, and I believe it's called a bat vial. Now, it is carrying a what's called a Titan vial egg. And my thought is this egg is probably how T is able to create the Rexes to begin with. They probably borrow. They probably take the eggs, splice in the DNA of the pilots, and that's how they're creating Rexes. Because T is running into a problem where he can't keep up. So the drone makes a getaway, gets into the bay, They don't get to close the door quick enough. The vials start coming through. This sounds the alarm, and T is then alerted about it, and he's like, should we start an evacuation? T says, no, I'm going to go ahead and let my dog off the leash, or rather let two of my dogs off the leash. And now the dogs in question here are the fighters. He puts up a barrier between the two, and he starts to tell them, hey, we got vial breaking and we need you guys to go out and deal with it. But he tells the audience, he's like, that is not the end of our fight, people. They're going to go out there and the fight will continue while they defend the city. Now, I'm going to stop right there. I have some problems here. And this is kind of like a two-parter because we haven't gotten to another part of this. I don't know why you're setting your fighters out to defend the city, especially with how these fights go. These Rexes are mangled and bashed and killed in the ring, so I would think having more would be a better thing. Like, you should have a separate thing that's out there protecting your city rather than your fighting Rexes. I do have some issues there. Especially just because they seem to always fight to the death. Doesn't make a whole lot of sense. So I'm going to park some of that for later because we are going to get to more of this. So, yeah, they're going to be sent outside to go deal with that. Alex's dad informs him, hey, Nate's been through that, and just kind of lets him know what's going on. It says there's no rounds, no referees, no rules. You know, you're going to go out there. You got, you have like kinetic punches and kinetic moves in general, all to your ability, and we're going to see some of those later on as to what that means. And also, another little issue I have here is the pilots get covered up here. Now, Nate was killed because he was struck by one of the Rexes. Why is this not a thing that's always implemented? That is a little bit of an issue for me. I'm like, it doesn't seem like it really costs anything to always have the pilots sealed up, so why wouldn't they be while they're fighting? So I find that to be a little bit of an issue as well. And so out they go. And I do like that they get like little wings so they can glide on down. They're immediately attacked. And 232 is the first one attacked. Razor and Anna go out to bail out 232 and Alex, but it's also they don't want those two getting all the glory, so they're like, nah, give me some of that action. So she gets in, gets one of her little harpoons in. They bash through a building, and then they come out, and the vial's been dealt with, so now they're back to fighting. And this is where we're starting to see some of our kinetic shots. All these like big energy buildups here. Pretty sweet action. And now we have Titan class vial also coming in. Because they've noticed the big shockwave here. So they're like, oh, what the hell is that? I'm gonna go see what that's all about. So these two are like, all right, brief truce. Let's deal with the vial. And they're very concerned with how much of these these Titan class ones there are, because they're like, we don't normally see them in this big of a herd. And yeah, they're out there doing as best they can. Now, Alex is starting to have a little bit of a panic here. He's concerned about Anna. He's talking that he can't breathe. You know, he's starting to like hyperventilate and things like that. And he's freaking out because, once again, 232 is not responding to him whatsoever. And you know, his dad's just like, well, let him just do whatever he's got to do. He's been through this before. He can handle this. And more of the little tiny vial critters, they're starting to get around the cockpit. His dad's like, don't worry, they can't break through. And again, this goes into why aren't they covered while they're fighting? If these guys can, not get through that at all, surely that like a punch or something like that would be able to keep the pilots protected as well by being under this cover. And, he's still freaking out, and he's just kind of getting overloaded, ends up blacking out. They're immediately notified at T's like center control here that Alex is out. He's still fully connected with the Rex, but the Rex is in full fight mode, and nobody's controlling it. So that's a big concern because, like we heard with Anna, the Rex being under no control could do more damage than the vial. So that's a huge concern to everybody. So we actually now we're cutting into Alex's psyche here, and he's got Nate and his dad over here. This is Alex, this silhouette, and they're talking about. Alex is pretty pissed off that Anna got cut, and his dad's like, "We had no choice. We had to do it. You were too distracted." His brother backs up his dad, saying, like, "Yeah, you're unfocused. I'm more worried about your potential." And Alex is like cussing at him, and so Nate's like, "Well, if you're gonna talk like a man, why don't you step in the ring?" And we see that Alex is kind of a little kid right here, but then he's like, "Wait, that's not how that went." And immediately goes to current day Alex. And he's actually now just happier than hell to see his brother now that he's kind of regained his own control in his dream. And he's like, "How is this possible?" And Nate tells him, part of me still lives within 232, and since they're all synced up, that's how that is possible that they're able to communicate like this. And what Nate tells him, he's like, I need you to fight me. And his brother is like, "What?" And then we cut away. Back in the fight outside with the vial, and 232 kind of runs off. And they're like, "Well, what the hell?" It's like, "Don't worry about it. It makes you look better because you're taking on the herd by yourself." Well, 232 scales one of these dilapidated buildings, yells out "epic," and comes crashing down with a big old kinetic punch. And even Anna's like, "I got to get the hell out of here," just gonna get blasted by that shit. And so she's also concerned, like, "Hey, that one just tried to kill me." And at that time, Troy, the guy from the beginning, her corner man, is like, "Hey, T needs to talk to you." And T breaks down the situation that Alex is not in control. He's actually passed out. And she needs to kill 232 and bring Alex to T. And she's like, "Okay, well, I still have one of my venom harpoons." Shoots it at 232. And it is caught. And not exactly... he's not exactly happy by that. Cut back into the dream briefly, and Nate's explaining to Alex, "Hey, 232's not respecting you because he respects a champion. I was the champion, and anything less he's not going to respect." And that it's all about balance. We need you to have your head back in the game, more or less. And so he's like, if you want his respect, you need to beat a champion. Do you feel like a champion? No. Do you want to be? Yes. It's like, then fight me and win. And he goes on to kind of lecture Alex. He's like, "You've been looking for handouts for all this respect. You got to earn it." And Alex starts giving out excuses, and his brother he's like, no more excuses. We don't have time for that shit. He's like, "Look at this symbol. This is like a symbol for hope." He's like, "The people that have this, they're seen as somebody who's fearless and focused and ready. And, that's what they need you to be." And then we get a nice little callback to the beginning where it's like, "We're stones, we fight to the grave." And so the two start to fight, and Nate is schooling Alex. Is like, you're overswinging because you're being emotional. And then continues while they're fighting. It's like, you're at the top. Everybody's coming for you. You need to be at your top at all times. There's somebody out there who's going to have your number, but, basically try to push them out. There's always you got to have your control because there is somebody who's going to be bigger, badder, and ready for you. And that is when the ground starts to shake and we see a bigger opponent. Big ass arm. there's 232. He ain't no small rinky-dink creature either. So we see what's going on. And yeah, even 232 is over here looking pretty worried. And we get this awesome ass monstrosity. I really like the look of this creature. Like, look at that. Beautiful. All right. And then Anna's like, I think we're going to need some reinforcements. And so T and his crew, they're seeing this, and T's like, I've always suspected that there would be some bigger vial out there calling the shots, but he's like, I didn't think it would be this big, this ugly, and what do we call it? He's kind of bouncing around some ideas. It's like Alpha Vial or King Vial, and his assistant's kind of freaking out a little bit. He's like, shit, that's what we have the Rexurrection program for. And so now here we go. I'm coming back to my issue of having the fighters out there. You have these guys already ready. Why weren't they the ones already tapped? And so even if this was a new program, you have them ready now. This is only moments after you sent out Alex and Anna. So why weren't they automatically tapped? But I'm trying to give it the benefit of the doubt that this is a new program, that T has finally got this underway and everybody's now ready. So maybe this wasn't a thing implemented before, but I still find it a foolish endeavor to have all of these fighters killing one another when you kind of need them to also protect the city. So I do have some issues there. But yeah, we're seeing some really cool ones. This guy always kind of reminds me of the movie, what is it, Small Soldiers, with the little toy soldiers. One of the, I think it's Argonaut, kind of looked like this. I forget the name of it, but yeah, he's got like that kind of look to him. It just always reminded me of it. I'm not saying it's like a blatant ripoff or anything like that. And then yeah, we're seeing some more. And of course, let me flip this real quick. We got Rune and Gun both back in it. And as T is telling us, every one of these guys are better than ever, including these two. And that is the end of our book. So then the rest of this is nice artwork and stuff like that. But yeah. So very, very good stuff. I do like the whole fighting comic aspect of this, as opposed to sticking with like superheroes and things like that. Having something like this where we're dealing more with like fighting kaiju monsters, I'm all about that. Like this is definitely more up my alley. It's got some issues for me, but I would still recommend this one without even flinching. As far as my overall grade, I keep bouncing between 7 and 8. I'm having a hard time between. So I'm going to just kind of puss out and say 7.5. Because I'm like, any day I could say 7 or an 8. Like, I really have a hard time nailing it down. I also found there to be just a little bit of the as you know kind of dialogue. Now, it's not that bad. It's done in a fairly decent way, but it does come off a little... it's just being said for the sake of the audience. Like, the whole thing between Anna and Troy, there was a little bit of that. It's not by any means the worst dialogue. The dialogue is not that big of an issue for me. Really, it's just the whole plan of sending out kaiju monster fighters to go deal with the vial out there, and they're killing each other in the ring. So I'm like, you basically only ever have like 1 or 2 fighters that can go out there and protect the city. And these there's like, hundreds, thousands, not to mention that big ass one. So I don't understand that part. But yeah, this is an easy recommend for me. And I will have where you can pick this up in the link in the description. So if this sounds like something you want to check out, be sure to check out the link in the description. But that is all I have for today, guys. So until next time, take care and God bless.